Production of Cornell University.
Okay, when we talk about erosion, most people would think about erosion. We think about sort of this type of erosion. But what I'd like to do is also talk about some other types of erosion. We have this end of the erosion where we're seeing the cut, where this material is being pulled away. But we also have erosion events where we look at the other end of the spectrum, where we're looking at the sediment being deposited. Okay? Now, when we have flood events and things like that, people, we got water coming in, and you're sort of like, oh, it's taking everything away. But it's also a case where the water is bringing stuff in. Okay? Some very good scenarios right here in New York State was when the Susquehanna was moving through, or flooding not that long ago. We had farms that were basically taken away, and then we had farms that were basically buried. Okay? You got to think about this end of the spectrum as well. Now, from a management sense, the Mississippi does this all the time as well. When a dike breaks on a farmland area, the farms are usually ruined for a period of time. But it's not because the soil of their farm is taken away. It's because their rich, lush soils are basically buried underneath sand. Does that make sense? Okay, so from a management sense, what are some of the strategies here? Think about it from a soils perspective. How would you think about remediating or mitigating, bringing this soil back into production without having to take a backhoe to it? Thoughts? Deep-rooted material, first thing to stabilize it, because this stuff is going to be moving all over the place. But if it's sand, it's probably not going to have a lot of water holding capacity. So get those roots down to the old soil, in essence. Is that your thought? So get the roots, put plants in that are deep-rooting, you'd also have to think about what type of plant, not just deep-rooting, but also they'd have to be drought resistant to get to that. If I put little seedlings in there sitting in sand, they're not going to make it. So I'm going to have to think about how I'm planting. Any other strategies? Go.
You can put like nitrogen fixing.
You can put N-fixing plants in there. Around here, you're going to have temporary drought type of conditions. You're probably not going to be that big of a deal. But last summer was a drought year for us. So again, you're going to have to think about how those plants are going to get established. Any other strategies? So far, we got the plant strategies. Any other strategies? If I was going to put an amendment or something like that in there.
Organic matter?
Adding organic matter would go a long way to sort of increasing water holding capacity. You're not going to have an issue with infiltration here. So organic matter is not going to do a lot for infiltration for you. But it certainly will do a lot for water storage. And it will also do a lot for nutrient holding capacity. Yeah, you're also going to get, you're going to get fertilizer from them, but it's more about the ability to hold on to those nutrients as well. Any other thoughts here? No? All right. This photo is not upside down. Any thoughts as to what we're seeing here? This is very large scale. This is regional. To sort of give you an idea, that's a building over there, a little scalar. It's a rather large building. What? It's, well, theoretically it could have been, but right now, you see all these sort of waves that you're seeing in here? And it's not water. It's not mud. This is wind. Okay, these are dunes. Somehow, my sequence is out of order. We're supposed to be looking at this kind of landscape. Sorry, we'll go back to that one. Drier environments. Okay, so this is water erosion on top of a drier environment, very flat landscape. Moving through, where you see these sort of hummocks is where the grass has basically been established, and the grass is literally, or the plants are literally holding the soil in place, and everything else is being moved away. Do you guys remember when we were talking about real erosion? I had this this one slide that had sort of like pediments or pillars, small scale. The pencil was like this big, and the pillars were like this big. Okay, and what was sitting on top of the pillars? Little pebbles, right? Okay, well, the same thing's sort of happening here. In this case, the roots of the plants are basically stabilizing the soil around it, and everything else is just sort of being eroded away. Okay, So here's some encroachment. This is agricultural land sitting over here. Okay, but you can see this. It's just when I say agriculture, sort of grazing land. Okay, you can see the encroachment coming in. Okay, here's the picture of that sort of the grazing land. Very sparse. Now, part of what's going on here potentially is overgrazing on this side, and we're seeing desertification type of offense. But in this scenario, we're actually looking at, what the heck? The whole thing, oh, right here. In this case, what we're looking at is we're looking at sort of desertification, the desert encroaching in on the agricultural land. Okay, this is actually the Midwest. Okay, this is the Texas Panhandle. So this is not necessarily northern Africa. This happens all over the world. Okay, some more slides of this. You can see this was agricultural land. This is probably cotton land. Okay, and you can actually still see where the rows were. This is North Africa, but you're basically looking at when the wind picks up, where's this stuff going? Okay, this is sort of the Lust type of event we had periglacially, except this is climate and humans. Okay, here's a little bit more dramatic, where you're looking at the dunes coming in. This is the dust. This is the dunes. I got one really dramatic slide. This one. This is beautiful. I mean, that's a pretty picture, unless you're the person that lives here. So this is what's happening in the world. Now, some of this is natural, and some of this is us moving into places we probably shouldn't be, but some of this is us doing stuff and the world coming to us. Okay, so I'm not even going to go back to the slide. This is a far removed from that water deposited sand sitting 6 or 8 inches thick. We're looking at meters of stuff. I mean, these are trees here. I think this is Morocco. I'm not sure, though. Yeah, the southern end versus the northern end of the desert. Okay, so strategies. Let's go back to the planting one. Right there. What are they doing? Now, this is not going to stop that. But this might. This is basically that. What you're looking at here is webbing of plants. Okay, it's like a jute webbing, and then there's seeds, and they basically grass out of it. It's meant to stabilize the movement of the dune. Okay, here's another example. In this case, you're looking at cactuses series. This is sort of like terracing. They're basically taking the terrace of the dune, and they're basically putting these things in. Okay, and this is also, they're putting this in for agricultural purposes. They'll use these to harvest. Scenario, sort of, this is a sequence of events. This is what the landscape looked like. This is what they then did, where they basically dug a lot of holes and planted fairly regularly plants. Dun, 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 today. Starting from that, ending with that. So what happened? Yes, a lot of dedicated people stood up, and did the right thing. But what did they do? How did they get it to that? What if they plant? What's going on? What? Okay. So the plants, they put these plants in place. The plants are doing two things. One is they're stabilizing stuff. Okay? In fact, the plants are acting, in a sense, acting very much like those check dams. They're stabilizing the soil at that location. And with windbreaks, they're reducing, because they're creating a reference on that soil surface, they're reducing the amount of wind. So not only are they stabilizing the soil that they are sitting in. They're also reducing the amount of wind, which means they're capturing a larger space. Much like those check dams are reducing the speed of the water, so the entrainment of material in that water, the stuff that's being entrained starts falling out. Well, the same thing's going to happen here. Okay, and as these trees get bigger and bigger and bigger, they're going to be more and more and more effective. Okay, what else are they doing? Yeah, they could theoretically be doing that. They could be mining water and bringing the water back up to the surface. And there's a lot of trees that do that. And there's a lot of research that's on people that are looking at that. Okay, so I've got stabilization and I potentially have water mining. What else is going on? Organic matter contributions. Right now, I mean, if you look at this slide right here, this is not one species of organism or plant that's in here. Yet they only planted one. They planted that. You know, this is what they planted. Yet, they're getting, at the end of the scenario, they're getting this. So, these plants start stabilizing stuff. They start adding organic matter. Okay, they're stabilizing the wind. You're getting more soils that are being captured in this place. With those winds are also coming seeds. You know, theoretically, they could have seeded as well. Okay, but now that I've captured other stuff in here, I now stabilize my environment. And from a soils perspective, what am I doing? I'm stabilizing, I'm adding organic matter, potentially mining water. I'm creating an environment that can support this. Now, the reality is they could be cutting this. They can be cutting this for grazing or for firewood or something like that. Okay? Yet they still get the benefits of the landscape. You're not getting a lot from that. Okay? Questions? Any other thoughts?
This has been a production of Cornell University, on the web at cornell.edu.